outings that you're doing with your family or with a loved one really allows permission for play and for interacting with each other in a deeper and more significant, perhaps, way. One of the really cool things that I have read in the past has been by this philosopher named Maxine Greene, with an E on the end. I had the wonderful opportunity to meet her about 10 years ago, and she was the philosopher in residence at the Lincoln Center Institute in New York. She was a prolific writer and just an incredible human being. And she really talked about how engaging in a work of art, even if you're not creating it, but if you're going to see something, there's this really amazing dialogue that happens between you as the viewer of the work of art and the work of art itself. It's in that sort of liminal space where you're engaging with this work of art, and that helps you and the person who had created that to shift your focus. So if you are participating with your family by going to an art gallery, you're inviting a shift of focus. If you're creating a piece of art and giving that to a family member, you're also creating a shift of focus, and you're creating a connection, and you're creating opportunities for permission to play.
Very nice. And as you were talking, just the idea of emotional memory came up, and the arts provide that deep reservoir of connecting us to our emotions, which makes the memory that much sweeter and fonder. Yeah. And I don't know enough about dementia and memory care and loss and all of that to really know this, but my intuition tells me that it has to have some kind of meaningful place in that body of work as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I know from myself, I have certain artistic objects that were made by great-grandparents of mine, like a knitting or crochet sort of thing for the table that I have my great-grandmother made. I met my great-grandmother, but she passed when I was 2, so I don't have a lot of memories of her, but I have something that she crafted, and yes. She took the time in her hand and all of the thoughts that she had when she was making it. You know, it's such a gift to have that memory of her without actually knowing her. So that sort of interaction that I have with that particular object that we have sitting on a table in our living room, it just connects me to her and to her legacy and to her life in a way that perhaps a picture might not, in the same kind of way.
Yeah, I get it. Wow, yeah. That's amazing. I have one object like that from one of my grandmothers. It's not really even hers. I bought a copy of it so that I could have it. So I have 4 sisters, and I knew that somebody else would probably get the real one, you know, because I don't care about things like that. But I wanted that memory, so I bought a copy of this one thing that's just imbued with memory, the memory of her.
That's so wow. Great. That's so great.
Well, I just love talking with you, Jen. I could talk for another hour with you, at least, but we don't have the time today.
Okay.
But I would like to ask you just one final question. I will actually make sure that our listeners have your website, your Facebook page, and your Twitter handle. But my last question for you is, do you have any hot projects or anything that you're currently working on that you would like to mention that we haven't been able to talk about today?
Well, I would say that I'd love to talk a little bit about a project that I just finished in hopes that it will continue in some form in the future. So one of the really amazing projects that I worked on in this last year, it finished in June, so it's not that long ago that it was finished. But it was a project in partnership with the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle and the University of Washington Musical Theater Department and the University of Washington Medicine. And so I taught a course at the University of Washington during spring quarter of this year, so it was March through June, and worked with the students first to study the current extant research in the arts and dementia as part of the course. And then the second part of the course was the students and I created a musical review using the research that we had come up with, specifically not about dementia, but for people with dementia and care partners in the audience. And then the last part of the course was we rehearsed and performed this piece. And throughout the entire process, we had a group of people from the community, half of whom had dementia, experiencing memory loss, and the other half were their care partners, who came to the class and got to know the students really well and gave us suggestions in what songs to include in this production. And, you know, if the scenes were too long, they would tell us, and if they didn't make sense, they would tell us, and they were an invaluable part of that process. So we performed the musical review 4 different times, once at the university, once at a memory care community in Seattle, and then twice at something that's called Camp Momentia, which is a really wonderful day camp experience for people experiencing memory loss and care partners, where folks engage in sing-alongs and other sorts of creative enterprises as part of the day, and they have s'mores and lunch, and in a really wonderful camp setting called Camp Long in the Seattle area. It's really great. So the performance was called Just a Moment, which was based on a suggestion by one of our advisory board members. And so that production was awesome. And it is our hope now that we will repeat the experience for the students at the University of Washington coming up, hopefully in spring quarter of this next year. So we're kind of in the process now of trying to figure out how to make it happen again, because it was such an incredible experience for the students and for the audiences and for me. It was a really amazing project. So that's a big hot one that we just finished and are hoping to create again. And then the other sort of top secret thing, which now if I'm saying it, it's not going to be secret anymore, is I'm in the process of creating something that's called the Art Gym. And I'm not 100% sure what that's going to look like, but it will be based on neuroscience and creating sort of a circuit training of creative arts engagement opportunities for people to come and stretch their creative muscles during the course of an art gym participation. So that one is currently in the works, super in the works. Really in the works. Yeah, so hopefully we'll have something ready to go by June of next year. So those are a couple things that we're working on at the moment.
That's awesome. And I don't know if you mean it as a double entendre, but the circuit training, I'm thinking of a gym where you have the circuit training.
Yes.
But you also have the brain, the circuitry of the brain as well. So I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I love it.
It wasn't, and I hadn't thought about it, but I'm realizing how genius the name is. Thanks, Gloria.
And I just have a question back to your comments about the collaboration for Just a Moment. You mentioned the UW, you mentioned the Fifth Avenue Theater, you also mentioned UW Medicine as part of that collaboration, but you didn't talk about how they were involved, I don't think. So did you say something about that and I missed it?
Yeah, I didn't say anything about that, so thank you for the follow-up question. So Dr. Lee Burnside, who's a geriatrician and also teaches in the University of Washington Medicine Medical Department School, whatever it's called over there, he was really helpful in the development of Just a Moment in that he provided a lot of medical and scientific research into dementia and helped also with the body of research the students engaged with in terms of the arts and dementia research. So he was our dementia expert from the medical perspective, and he's also a researcher in the arts and dementia, so he provided a lot of research for us as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. We are at the hour, Jen, and I just want to thank you again for your amazing work and your dedication. I'm going to say devotion. When I first met you several years ago, you were just on fire about about what you're doing, and your work has just blossomed, and I just pray that it will continue to blossom and feed you as well as the many, many people that you collaborate with and the folks whose lives you touch.
Oh, thank you so much, Gloria. That was so kind. And I have so enjoyed talking to you. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
Hope
well,
you
thank you.
Wonderful...
We'll have to figure out some kind of way. I have no idea if this is even possible, so I just got this little flirt. Wouldn't it be fun to figure out a way to get your performances or maybe a conversation after performance or something like that on the show? I would love that.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be really great. Yeah,
all right,
well,
don't give busy persons things to do, right? We'll figure out how to make it happen.
I love it.
All right, Jen, thanks again so much, and you have a blessed rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Gloria. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Welcome. Wonderful conversation. Thanks again to Dr. Jennifer Kulik for being my guest. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Jen's work, or, as she mentioned during today's conversation, if you want to learn more about her special Spark Box, you can get more information about it and actually buy this wonderful resource on her website. And her website is www.silverkite.us. If you want to reach out to Dr. Jen, you can do so on Facebook, and that's facebook.com/Silverkite Community Arts. Silverkite Community Arts, all squished together, and that's SilverKiteCommunityArts. Or you can reach out to Jen via Twitter, and that's at SilverKiteSEA, at SilverKite SEA, abbreviation for Seattle. Okay? Now, if you missed any part of this week's broadcast about play as the thing to create that very special spark in your life, you can listen to the podcast right here on Talk Network Radio, or you can catch us on iTunes or Android Alexa. Now, before I close today's show, I want to give a shout-out to all the artists out there, all the artists all around the world, to those amazing folks who understand the power of play, the power that play has to shape, mold, and transform our lives. Play as the thing to create that very special spark in their own and others' life. Now, when Dr. Jen mentioned that play is a special resource we can choose to have in our life, I was taking notes seriously. I mean, I was writing so fast, I got a hand burn right on my page. I really meant it when I said she'd given us a virtual book of bright ideas. I know when I'm with my graduate students, I encourage them to integrate play into their lives. The first week of school, they sort of look at me kind of like I have two heads, and they're going like, play? Really? But by the middle of the term, most of them are really getting into it, and by the end, they all see the beauty and value of experimenting, of using how might I rather than I should, or I must, or I really have to. Right? Those three special words, how might I, right? And to encourage them to flex their creative muscles, I actually invite them to sign up to lead maybe a 10 to 20-minute opening to begin one of our classes. One student, I remember, brought in a koosh ball, really colorful, just beautiful, and asked each person as we passed it around the class, we kind of threw it around, she asked each person to share a favorite song or scripture. And it was a wonderful way for us to get to know one another a little bit better. Another person brought in a prayer that he had learned as a young boy growing up in Africa. And he asked us to say it with him in a call and response kind of fashion, right? He'd say one line and then we'd repeat it, and he'd say another line and we'd repeat it. It was a beautiful prayer. And then he asks us to create our own prayer, either in words or in movement. Another woman brought colorful yardage and ribbons and cloth. She was from a